So here's a wrap up of last week's legal wins against the Trump administration. Normally I would have posted this on a Saturday instead of a Sunday, but it's my son's graduation, so it's been pretty busy. But I did want to come with you with the wins because there are plenty of it. And the wins this week are actually substantial because they impact so many people, so many lives. And the first one, and I'm going to go in order of the most recent one to the one that's earlier in the week. The most recent ones as of last week was an emergency order. Judge Susan Ilston, New District of California, stopped the Trump administration to do what's called a reduction in force, essentially a dismantling and firing of several employees across many agencies in the United States government. And what was brilliant about Judge Ilston's order is that not only did she say that the Trump administration is well aware that in order to reduce force into firing people, there's an actual specific process that you must undergo. And she pointed out that in the past, since 1924 or something like that, several presidents have attempted to reduce force, including President Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, George Bush, and Donald Trump. And they all have not been successful. Democrats and Republican presidents have been unsuccessful in reducing the force. Donald Trump himself, in his first term, attempted to do what he did by executive order, and Congress told him no because he knows he couldn't pass it. That's why he's doing it this lawless way and just figure I'm just going to do it anyway and see what happens, even though I know legally I can't do it. The last, I think, president was able to do it in a large amount was Bill Clinton. Now, the difference between what Bill Clinton did and what Donald Trump did is Bill Clinton, after he got approval from his Congress, the process of reduction of force includes allowing the employees that are going to lose their job to lateral over to other positions that's going to stay on the insurance. The way Donald Trump has done it has been draconian without regard for, it's not a scalpel approach, without a regard to the extent to which the jobs were needed or not needed, and they end up cutting things based on cultural wars, and it's going to impact not just people in blue states, but also residents in red states going to be impacted. Anyway, but that's not the legal ramifications. The judge also quoted the Heritage Foundation, which is the authors of the Project 2025, and the Heritage Foundation specifically stated, I'm going to read what they wrote. The Heritage Foundation acknowledged that in order to accomplish the reorganization objectives would need explicit statutory authority from Congress. So they know that it requires statutory authority. So they said the Donald Trump administration essentially violated the separation of powers because it's not the president's job to dismantle and fire employees of agencies. It has to do Congress that allocates the funding to pay for those folks, and only Congress. So they exceeded their authority via ultra-virus, separation of powers. And let's say they wanted to do it the proper way, which includes consulting Congress. They didn't do any of that. They didn't do any research. They didn't do anything. So she halted it on the 20 days pending the challenge of the reduction of force in the first place.
And get this, they literally try to argue that the executive order just told them to do guidance, to go do the research and make a determination. It said that we didn't want you guys to fire these people. We want you to do your own independent research and determine who to fire. To which the lawyers representing the union said, BS, no, Doge, the president, and social media elsewhere were boasting about cutting and that they were going to be doing the one to cut. So that's a freaking flat out lie. Like I said before, they say one thing in social media, and when they go to courts, they argue something totally separate, as if the plaintiffs and the petitioners in the case aren't going to pull out their social media posts and show it to the judge and be like, they're lying.
So that's a win, but you're going to see a lot of that as you've seen before if you follow me. My name is JJ Legal. So on here on social media, what I do is help the members of the public understand the various different case laws and lawsuits filed against the Trump administration, and I share it with you on a layperson sort of perspective so you can understand it versus like using too much legal language and legal jargon. So if you're interested in that, share this account with other people. Follow along. You can find me here on wherever you're finding me, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Threads, on Blue Sky, on Substack. I'm on all places trying to make sure everyone knows. So that's the first one. So let's get on because there's so many other ones and that impacts a lot of people. We'll see what happens. Keep up with me. All right. Second big win is, you remember Risa Turk. She might have been known. You might have seen some ICE agents surrounded this Tufts University graduate student who had co-authored a journal article, essentially where she was critical of the Israeli government and was supporting the Palestinian people. For that reason alone, the Trump administration decided we're going to detain this woman. She's been in detention for over 2 weeks. Now, before I get to legal stuff, imagine if an American written an article critical of some other country. which we do all the time, and you travel to that country, and that country jails an American on the strength and basis only because they wrote something critical of the country, we would say, what the hell, get them out. And we know that Republicans, right-wing, red pill sort of people have been caping when an American father left and got arrested for some gun violation, because they're like, we value the Second Amendment in the United States. We value the First Amendment. We thought so in the United States. So to hold this woman who's a student for 2 weeks because she wrote something that's critical of another nation. It wasn't even critical of the United States. It was critical of her university and another nation. No, we would be having at it. So the judge essentially said, you need to release her. There's no reason for you to detain her because you have not shown she's a danger to society. Essentially what they did was they removed her. They detained her, say, for removal, but she had not gone through the removal proceedings. They just detained her, dropped her, throw her in jail, and said, we're going to remove you, so we're going to keep you. The judge was like, she's not a danger to society. First, they tried to remove her from Vermont to Massachusetts, from New England, down to Louisiana. She was there in Louisiana. They have no reason to, other than if you follow my account, I say the Trump administration routinely takes people that they detain in areas that are quote blue liberal states, and they take them to like Florida. I mean, they take them to Louisiana. They take them to detention center in Texas because they say we have to go to court. They can get jurisdiction. I listen to the oral arguments because they've appealed this decision up to the Court of Appeals, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and I haven't even finished listening, but it's ridiculous. They're arguing stuff. They're asking them, like, what's the basis? They're saying, well, we didn't know the custodian that we lost in transition. They're saying stuff. The judge is grilling the Department of Justice attorneys and saying, so who was the custodian? And the judge, the lawyer for the Department of Justice, Pam Body's lawyer, Department of Justice, says, I don't know. Your argument is that she shouldn't be in Vermont or she shouldn't be in Massachusetts, New England, because there was a dispute regarding to the custodian who was in charge of her, who was managing or handling her as they were moving her from place to place, and she should be in Louisiana. And when we ask you who was the custodian for Louisiana, you don't know. So there was before 3 panel judges. I'm hearing them. They're frustrated because they're doing stuff that's lawless. They have no legal basis, no factual basis, no evidentiary basis for what they're doing. They're just doing it because Donald Trump wants them to just punish people. And you can't, our laws require more than just you don't like them because of a culture wars. You cannot do that. Well, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. And if you do that, it's against the law. So that's what they're doing. They're breaking the law in almost all of these 200 cases. They're lawless. Anyway, so nonetheless, after ordering that she be returned to Vermont, she was returned to Vermont, and then the judge says remove her. The lawyers said they even tried to put an ankle monitor on her, even though the court order said specifically remove her on her own recognizance while this case continues, because they're still arguing that she needs to be detained and removed. It's bullshit. And they tried to put an ankle monitor on her, and they had to resist. Luckily, she had an attorney who was like, no, the order says no ankle monitor. Why are you trying to put an ankle monitor on her? Y'all do not, as Senator Chris Murphy said when he was at the hearing with Chrissy Noem, it's like, you do not do what you want to do. The law requires X, Y, and Z. Why are y'all doing shit that's against the law? Anyway, I digress. I'm not going to get like this on the other cases. They just really pissed me off. So anyway, so that's the second win. Risa Turk has been freed. She said thank you. She's representative of several other violations, First Amendment violation rights of people. If you're here in the United States, irrespective if you're a citizen, a green card holder, a temporary resident, a visitor, a student visitor, a visitor just to watch the monument, you're all entitled to First Amendment rights, and you can protest. So yeah, the next case. So my guy, Judge John McConnell from Rhode Island, had to step in and stop the Trump administration from attempting to dismantle the Institute for Museum and Library Services, which gives grants to schools and libraries, the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, which helps mediate disputes on a federal level, and then finally the Minority Business Development Agency, of course, on the basis that the Trump administration does not have the authority to do that. He essentially says there's ultra virus. Your power, your Article 2 authority does not allow you to dismantle and remove agencies, and you know that. He said specifically that the executive order aiming to downsize independent agencies to the minimum functions required by law is against the law itself. You cannot do that. It violates survivors' separation of powers. And even if we were to get to the process, which we didn't need to get there at all because on constitutional grounds, it's illegal. This is what Judge McConnell wrote in his 49-page decision. He said, by issuing the reduction executive order, which effectively directs withholding of funds that Congress recently statutorily appropriated to those organizations, those agencies, resulting in the cessation of several of their programs, the executive is usurping. Usurping means to remove. You don't have the authority. They were already appropriated these funds by another agency. They already started. They already budgeted. How the hell? So they also said, so you violate the Administrative Procedure Act, you violate ultra vires, meaning like beyond the spoke, you violate the take care clause, meaning as a president, you're supposed to take care of your peoples, take care of the country. You're not taking care of nothing. You piece of shit. He didn't say you piece of shit. That's me. I'm ad-libbing. You need to have public comment. You need to have a basis for why you're removing these agencies. You have no reason. You have presented no legal justification for dismantling these agencies to the bare bones. The only reason they want to do it is because of culture wars. We don't operate that way in the United States. This is not a dictatorship. You asshole. They didn't say that. That's me ad-libbing. You asshole Donald Trump and your goons. There's be a Nuremberg trial. There's going to be truth and reconciliation for you people that are helping this fool accomplish his dumbass agenda. So anyway, 49-page said that reduction executive order was trash. Ignore that crap. So yeah, there's a preliminary injunction against that piece of doo-doo action. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so for the third time, a district court judge has determined that Donald Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, an 18th century law, to allow him and his goons at the Department of Homeland Security to round up random Latino and Hispanic men that they claim are part of a gang and send them off to a torture camp in El Salvador is against the law. Judge Alvin Hellerstein of the Northern District of California said that not only should the Trump administration not deport anyone in his jurisdiction, he said deportations under Alien Enemy Act would be unlawful because the destination El Salvador, a country, they paid someone to take our aliens to a country that they never came from. And it says, and they're supposed to stay there indefinitely, and it's a jail cell that's notoriously evil. Like, dude. And that shit, what the judge, Rodriguez Jr. in Texas, another judge in Colorado said, essentially, was that the Alien Enemies Act is supposed to be time of war. It's only used 3 times. During the War of 1812, during World War I, or World War II. We're not in any war. And then the second thing is, if you're not in war, it says when another nation has an excursion and we're sending people to come take over. Venezuela is not sending gang members. And definitely the gang members aren't trying to come and take over anything. They're just doing whatever they're doing. They're not coming to take over properties. So as to that law, when Congress created that law, the intent was not for what Donald Trump them trying to do with it. And that's unlawful to use that law as an excuse to deny due process rights, habeas corpus proceedings, and opportunity for those people to defend themselves against when I tell you, at some point in the future, watch his account, stay focused his account, I'm going to do a roundup of some of the people that they've claimed have been gang members. I'm sure other people have done them, but it's going to be like, you're going to see the extent to which is ridiculous. They're presenting absolutely zero law, zero justification, zero evidence, so little evidence, the judges and courts are like laughing, like, are you serious? Because for those of you who know, is that I'm familiar with people who've gotten indicted by federal courts. And the amount of data, the amount of research, the amount of testimony, the amount of hearings, the amount of investigation, the amount of surveillance that the federal government normally has gathered, culminated, created, the record they've built before they prosecute someone, before they submit them out of the country, before they do anything, is so substantial because they do not want to lose. Normally, that's the standard. The Trump administration are trying to deport people based on somebody looking funny, somebody wearing a jacket, somebody was married to somebody back when they were teenagers. They've since moved on with their lives. They're saying they're a senior gang member, Your Honor, and the courts are like, have you lost your freaking mind? You're telling me because this woman was married when she was 18 to a gang member back in Venezuela, that equals a senior gang member now? She has temporary protection status. She's living quietly with her husband and 3 kids, and you want to send her to what? If you were... That's what the judges are saying. Like, where's the evidence? Where's the data? Where's the facts? Where's the surveillance? Where are the hearings? Where's the testimonies? They don't have anything. I tell you guys, they're just lawless goons. I'm going to do a recap. Stay tuned to this account. I'm going to recap also some of these things. Anyway, I digress. Let's continue. So the other thing, speaking of, let me just go ahead and give you an update since this is kind of related. It's not necessarily a win. It's just a delay. Kilma Abrego Garcia, the Donald Trump administration, they've said states' rights privilege is a privilege. They're trying to avoid having to show the contract the fact that they actually are paying someone and they have the authority and ability to bring that guy back. And they're just looking every which way possibly can to avoid it. So the new thing they've filed, they're in the middle of discovery, is saying that state's privilege was essentially saying it has to do with, secrets, which has already been found in other cases to be a lie. Other courts have said this is just a contract matter. You entered a contract with these people. You can tell as a person who's paying, we're paying $15 million or whatever. I mistakenly said $50 million, $15 million or $14 million to house them. They work for us. A judge told you who you're subject to return this man, return these people, and you're not willing to do it, and you're trying to say something like, oh, it's a this, it's a that. It's not none of those things. It's a contract. So in order to do that, the same thing they did in Judge Boasberg's decision, they said it's a, in the Judge Boasberg's case, they said it was a state secrets. And Judge Boasberg was on the verge of saying, how can you claim state secrets privilege when you're putting all this stuff in social media? Marco Rubio's tweeting this stuff. Okay. Judge Boasberg also he had a hearing, and in his hearing, he asked the Trump administration specifically, he said Donald Trump went on TV in an interview and said he could pick up a phone and call and bring Kilma Abrego Rivera back. If that's the case, why have he not done so? To which the Department of Justice attorneys said, well, just because he thinks he can do that and he says that doesn't, what? And then they said, well, why don't you do it? And he said, it's up to the lawyers. And the lawyers were saying, like, well, you're the freaking president. Y'all just lying, just making up stuff. Just making up stuff. You're just making up stuff. And he also quoted Christine Noem, who had said that CCOT is one of the tools in the toolbox. If I have tools in my toolbox, how can I have a tool in my toolbox and one thing, that's my tool in my toolbox, and then say, actually, this tool in my toolbox, I have no control over it. I don't know how to get those tools back. That toolbox is really not mine. Once a tool goes in that toolbox, it's stuck in there. There's no way. Bullshit. Open the damn toolbox and take it back. They're just being lawless. So Judge Boasberg at the end of the hearing was kind of like, he wasn't convinced. There were and usual in this hearing and other hearings, again, I'm watching over 200 cases. I'm in the dockets. When people tell me, well, folks come at me on different social media platforms and they talk to me and they say, you're watching the media, or you don't know. I'm like, actually, you're not. I'm in the dockets. I'm listening to the testimony. I'm attending the testimonies. I'm hearing the hearings. I'm watching the court docket. And what I'm reporting to you, what I'm seeing, having a legal background, and I'm telling you, they don't know what the hell they're doing. It's just chaos. They're arguing. They have nothing to argue. It's lawless and just stupid. And that's why the Supreme Court is not going to be able to green stamp. I don't know why they think the Supreme Court was going to rubber stamp this crazy bullshit they're doing. They have no legal justification, no stats. And the courts are saying, you have provided me nothing. Anyway, let me not get upset. Let me move on. We have another win. Another win is there is a copper mine that is located on some property that's Apache owned. The Apache organizations representing Apache natives have gone up to the Supreme Court asking that the land transfer to this copper mining company be paused as to them because it's on their sacred ground. That case is now pending before this nice Supreme Court and had been paused. Trump administration wanted to release it, allow the company to start mining. Joe Biden paused it. Donald Trump came in and gave the copper mining company the green light to start drilling on the people's property. And so it's now at the courts, and the district court recently paused it on an emergency base, said that we'd already decided via previous administrations, previous courts, to pause this mining until the Supreme Court rules. So we're going to do that. The Trump administration does not care. The Supreme Court, you listen to this, they do not care about your rules. They don't care about your processes. They don't care. So you need to rein him in affirmatively and firmly and like succinctly. No him and han. No words that can be subjective. Clearly and distinctively say, no, you can't do this. This is against the law. Because they act like if you don't say that equivocally, they're going to try to like argue around it. And they're going to continue to do that until you come out forcefully and say, stop doing this bullshit. And then signal and nod, wink, wink, wink to Congress or the Republicans in Congress. We got to get these folks out of here. We got to get this band of inept goons out of here because they don't do nothing. They're going to destroy our country. They're already destroying our esteem of our country. Out of here. Okay, so anyway, so that was a win. Two more quick wins. I remember I told you that Radio Free Europe, Voice of America had gotten a district court judge to pause their firing and dismantling. A Court of Appeals judge, two Trump appointees and a non-Trump appointee judge paused the return of them. So en banc, if you're on my account, I tell you that once you go to the Court of Appeals, you're assigned 3 judges. You can then ask for en banc, the full panel. The District Court of Appeals, the majority on the panel are liberal, left-leaning, or were appointed by Democratic judges. So we knew on banc that they were going to lose, and that's what happened. So I'm sure they're going to appeal to the Supreme Court, or they're going to lose again. And I'm going to tell you here, you heard it here first, I think 1 or 2 cases they may win substantively, but the majority of times, the Supreme Court is going to rule against the Donald Trump administration on substance for all the lawless BS they've been doing this past 100 days. Yeah, so that's why I'm thinking, this ends, I'm not quite sure. Actually, listen for my secret, go to my, if you're a member of my secret community on Substack, TikTok, YouTube, and I'm going to create one for Instagram. I'm going to talk a little bit about next steps. And this next steps, I'm going to talk about what happens after when the Supreme Court rules against Donald Trump administration this year on substantive ground and successive cases. What's next? I'm going to discuss that there. So go look for it there. But in the meantime, that's a win for justice. It's a win for democracy. It was a win for rule of law when they actually, anyway. The last case is when they are put in their place as they should be. The last one is the Trump administration has tried to send in some undocumented people to Libya. So they essentially, if you don't know, brokered these relationships and deals. Marco Rubio did this with various different nations and said, we're going to send our folks out of the country. It's all of the xenophobic, like wet dream of Stephen Miller, who just wants to do as much as he can to remove. He does not believe that people of color, does not believe, folks belong in the United States. He's trying to get rid of as many as possible. He's calling them, aliens, and they're invading. And this also has a deterrent effect, which is true. And I'll give them credit for that. Because when Trump was in office the first time from 2016, 2020, his really super cruel, I don't know, Eighth Amendment violating actions of separating babies at the borders, all the sorts of crazy stuff he did was so insane that some people actually did choose, you know what, we're going to stop border crossings, did indeed drop under the Biden administration, partially perhaps because they say, when you get here, it's not worth it. But I think still people come anyway. We just have to treat them humanely, and we have the laws that says we're going to look at their asylum applications. If they don't qualify, they'll go back. People have gone back. They've deported people. They've deported people in all administrations, including this last one. People have been actually leaving. Just go ahead and use the process. There's no reason to do what you're trying to do illegally, unlawfully, and with so much force. Because with 100 days, it's been a total waste of time. Because our tax dollars are paying to defend against this nonsense. We pay the lawyers. We pay the court fees. We're paying for the time and energy to defend these cases. And we're on the side of the other people. We're not on their side. We're paying for our government to try to do this shit to other people. It's crazy. And then at the end of the day, when they lose and we have to pay, we're going to be paying further. We're also paying in the reduction in force. We're hemorrhaging scientists. We're hemorrhaging the greatest minds. We're discouraging international students to come here. Their tuition costs more. Schools in the United States are losing money because they're discouraging international students to come here. They're discouraging tourists to come here. They're firing IRS, so IRS cannot do audits, so they're losing money. We're losing revenue. Not only is it not efficient, it's also a cost. You're talking about spending so much money, but the revenue sources that come in, undocumented people spend something like $39 billion or something like that between federal, state, income, sales tax. We're going to lose all that if you send them all away. So I know everything's not perfect and we need to fix things, which is true. Yeah, all of that. We do need process, but you can do it lawfully. There's ways you can do it strategically and with a scalpel approach, not this hammer, roughshod sort of ridiculous just ways that's cruel and does not look good, and it's a mess, and no one likes it, and you're essentially drawing more enemies, and you're eroding your own MAGA base quicker than you did last time. And I don't know how they have an end game. I don't think there's chaos. I don't think it's organized. I'm not quite sure they have an end game. They just come in and just break shit on feelings. It's like, we don't like you, so we're going to just break it and just take it. We have the purse strings. We're going to control the purse strings, so we're going to rob. Essentially, they're robbing Congress. They're choking these agencies and robbing Congress. It's sort of violent. They're violently, with no money, You know, you have no money and you're using violence to just like physically choke the agencies and physically choke, manhandle these, you know, people who are here, immigrants, and not just the criminals, because they said, oh, it's the criminals. No, you're grabbing mothers and pregnant mothers and babies and children with cancer and students, people just minding their business. You've declared war on them, declared war in the United States, declared war on all of us when you dismantle environmental protection, take away safety work inspections or food and drug inspections, ship inspections. When you dismantle all of that stuff, why do you think a freak and with no justification, no ratification, you know that's going to impact us? When we looked at the impact of the dismantling, before we kind of like put it back, we're going to see the real life impact, not just on lives, a monetary impact, the fiscal impact. It's going to be a big ass mess. And we're like, that's why they don't do that, because it's just too much. The disruption is just disruption just for disruption's sake. Disruption is based on culture wars and feelings. And that's not how it works here. Anyway, I digress. I need to bring my I digress mug. So yeah, they stopped that. They're trying to ship people off to Libya. And Ed Martin, who is a little crazy goon that was sending people these stupid letters, he got railroad. So he's not going to be the DA for district, you know, so good. Winning. Anyway, that's it. I had a couple of rants there. I hope that's helpful for you. Check out my next video when I talk about like my thoughts and feelings on how all this works out, how all this pans out. And then I have a video on some insights from my private community. So check it out there. JJ Legal. Follow, share this video with other people. I'm sorry it was so long. I just had to get a lot on my chest. We had lots of wins and we'll continue to win. And I predict there'll be way, way more winnings. They're going to have a super, super losing record. This is all a freaking major waste of time. JJ Legal. Talk to you soon.